y'all. Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast. And some things happened. What do you know? But before we get into it, subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let me know how you're feeling in Mets land. I'm feeling pretty good. This is the guy I wanted from the beginning. But first, let's talk about Tucker real quick. $60 million to chase a ring. That's what he wanted to do. That's okay. You know, I didn't think LA was in it, and I was wrong. You know, what can you do about it? But it's okay. You know, they got a monster lineup. You know, I was pretty salty when Tucker signed with the Dodgers. You know, because I didn't think Bichette was an option. Once we traded Nimmo for Semien, all I thought about was Bichette as a second baseman. I didn't think of Bichette as a third baseman. So when we lost out on Tucker, I was pretty upset. You know, it's a crazy thing. We swooped in to take Bichette from the Phillies, just like the Dodgers swooped in to take Tucker from us. And that's the way free agency is, right? You never know what's going to happen in the last moment. And Tucker being a Dodger, batting fifth or sixth, you know, kind of tells you what he's looking for, right? He's not looking to be the guy. He's not looking for the pressure of being that guy. And so is that a guy that would have done well in New York? Most likely not. You know, just with those facts alone. You know, if it's just him chasing a ring, you know, maybe he does well in New York. I don't know. But from the outside looking in, if you want to be the third, fifth guy, best guy on the team, kind of puts a question mark on if you like being the guy, if you like even having that pressure on you. And so, you know, that's a thing that we need to consider as Mets fans, is that Tucker didn't want that pressure, and that's okay. You know, here being distracted a little bit by the Rams Chicago game, and you know, as Houston. C.J. Stroud messed up completely in that first game. You know, if he took care of the ball, maybe Houston pulls that out. But we're not here to talk football. We're here to talk some baseball. At the end of the day, my Giants are going to be relevant again with picking John Harbaugh as their new head coach. But again, I digress. Just an exciting day in Giants land. So. Talk about Bichette. Let's talk about Bichette coming to the Mets. It's a complete surprise. Wasn't on the radar. Kind of mentioned it earlier. I thought he wasn't an option for us after Semien coming to the Mets. If you heard me before talk about this, Bichette was the first guy I was talking about wanting this offseason. Seeing him in the postseason play and seeing how clutch he is in the postseason, that's the guy I wanted. That was my number one target. I thought that he might have gone back to Toronto, but they chose to go Okamoto. Time will tell if that was a good move or not on them. But this was my number one target. I don't know about you guys, what you guys think about the pickup, but this was my number one target. You can't see clutch, right, until you see it. We saw him perform in the biggest stage, in the World Series, and he was clutch. This is something the Mets have been missing for a long time. Somebody with that clutch gene. And Bichette has it. You know, he had a terrible 24. Injury plagued, and, you know, we all thought that he had fallen off the map. and it was injuries. At the end of the day, we'll see if he stays healthy. That's the risk you take. Especially when this is the guy that's replacing Alonso. This is the guy that's going to replace Alonso playing 162 games. So we're going to hear it from those Alonso stands that if he doesn't play, at least 150 games, we're going to hear it from them, right? If he doesn't produce to the level he did last year, we're going to hear it, And that's the risk you take when you give up on a guy that the fans loved, even though they hated a year before, And so, and this is not me talking bad about Alonso. I didn't want to sign him a year ago. You can go back to the tape and watch the video, and you could see that I did not want to sign him. As a matter of fact, I was talking about Brett Beatty last year at first base if we didn't sign Alonso. So that's going to be interesting to see. Bichette in this lineup, talking about having protection for Soto. I think this is better protection than Alonso, right? This guy strikes out at less than 20%. 20%. This guy doesn't like to walk. That may be a knock, may not be a knock, but this is like Jeff McNeil on steroids. So if you liked that year where Jeff McNeil was just clutch and winning the batting title, well, this is Jeff McNeil on steroids. This guy hits 300, which you don't see anymore. And he doesn't like to walk. He's going to swing. He's a free swinger, but he's going to put the bat on the ball. He's not going to strike out because he strikes out less than 20%. So talk about protection for Soto. When teams know that this guy's not going to strike out, that they can't often strike him out, that they have to get him out by either making a real quality pitch, because you're going to have him, the game plan against him is to have him pop out or ground out, right? Not to strike him out. Guy like Pete, you can game plan to strike him out, right? When you pitch him a certain way, he goes and chases. With this guy, you don't have that game plan because, again, less than 20% strikeout rate. I think it was 17 last year, 17%. And that is, I think, even better protection for Soto. That's the top three in the lineup, right? Lindor, Soto, Bichette. Probably Polanco right after that. Depending how the rest of the offseason shakes out, we'll see how it shapes to be the lineup after Bichette. Right now, we're just going to count those three as the top, right? Lindor, Soto, Bichette. Some are talking about Soto being leadoff. At the end of the day, I'm not going to have a problem with Soto batting leadoff, but because we know this was last year, I'm just going to pencil in as Lindor, Soto, and Bichette. If it changes, we'll see. But the only way I see that changing is really flip-flopping the top two, right? Lindor and Soto, and making Soto the leadoff hitter. Other than that, I think this is awesome protection for Soto. This is a guy that's not going to strike out. This is a guy that if guys are on base, they're not going to just walk Soto, because this is going to be a guy that's going to put the bat on the ball. We need to understand that this is a guy that's going to put the bat on the ball. As much as we all loved Pete Alonso, this is a different type of hitter, right? So, one, we're not comparing apples to apples. We're not going to compare the numbers completely, because Alonso is a pure power hitter. Bichette is a complete hitter, right? He may not give you 30, 40 bombs, but he will put the bat on the ball, and he will give you doubles, and batting behind a guy like Soto, who's always on base. Those RBI numbers might tick up a little bit. So at the end of the day, this is an awesome pickup. I'm fully on board with this pickup. I haven't wavered in my trust with David Stearns. I know some of the fan base have, but I haven't. And he actually gave me the guy that I wanted. I wanted Bo Bichette in this. I know he's not a great fielder, and people are going to say, well, run prevention this, run prevention that. This guy was a shortstop. He didn't play shortstop great, right? He wasn't a great shortstop. But the fact that he was a shortstop and now he's moving out of that position kind of tells you that wherever you put him, he's going to be better at that position than shortstop, because shortstop is the premium defensive position, right? So he was an average shortstop, which would make him a better position player either at second or at third. Right, the knock for him at third is his arm. That's what people are worried about with him playing at third. Well, we'll see, because at the end of the day, positioning matters. Scouting reports matter, and we'll see. I know people are going nuts on this run prevention, but this guy's going to be a decent fielding third baseman. He was playing shortstop. So, yes, not a good shortstop, but the fact that you're playing shortstop means that you should be better in the other position. So I'm not going to belabor that point anymore, but I have full confidence that he'll take to third base. Not easily, because, you can't say that about anything, but he'll take to that position, I think, fairly quickly. So where does that leave Brett Baty? He was our starting third baseman before this week. I said it a few moments ago. Baty is now our first baseman. Or let me rephrase that. I can't, locking him in at first base is probably not accurate. He's potentially our new Jeff McNeil, though. He's going to play all over. We already know he can play second base. We already know he can play a good third base. We already know that he's played some in left field. All we need to see is him playing at first. And again, different position, different things that they ask of you at first base. But as far as fielding, won't have a concern at first base, right? The biggest thing at first base, and Keith Hernandez always talks about this, is the footwork, trying to get to the bag, right? And so that's really the concern that we'll have for Brett Baty playing first base. But I think he's going to play a lot of first base. I think that Bo Bichette's going to be a DH a lot. Right, he's a guy that has injury history, so that's something that we can't also forget. So I think that he'll play 150 games, but what's the percentage of that, right? How many of that will be at DH when you got a guy like Baty on your team, right? That can play a solid third base. And that's if Baty stays on the team, if he doesn't get traded, which I don't think so. But, never say never in these things. Who would have thought Bichette would have been a Met? So so you can never say for sure what's going to happen. But I have every confidence that Brett Baty is going to take to first base. And right now, if you look at our team, because he played left field, he's penciled in as our left fielder, right? Carson and Benj and Taylor are gonna fight it out for center field. So how about that? We might start off the season with Brett Baty starting in left field. I'm not hoping for that. I'm not hoping. I'm hoping that that's not the case. I actually don't want Brett Beatty to be our starting left fielder, but he. I think he can play it. He's going to be our next Jeff McNeil, at least for this year until all this gets sorted out, right? And baseball has a thing of sorting sorting itself out. Right, last year we came in with three third basemen, or they didn't come in, but throughout the year we had three third basemen, right? Mauricio, Beatty, and Vientos. Well, at the end of the season, we really only trusted one, and that was Brett Beatty. And so, and then every year we have come into the season with depth in our starting rotation, and that sorts itself out. Last year it sorted itself out badly. But it always sorts itself out, and that's the thing that we should not be concerned about, having too many players on the team, because these things sort themselves out. So right now, in my mind, and this is just my opinion, guys, in my mind, I think Brett Beatty is going to be playing a lot of first base, and Polanco is going to DH. Because I think Vientos is going to be traded. Don't hold me to that, because David Stearns does what he wants to do. But I think Brett Beatty is going to be playing at least 60% of the games at first base. So what does that mean for our pitching rotation? Right now, we are still looking for a guy at the top of the rotation. Steve Gelbs put it this way, that the Mets are still looking for a guy to pitch game 1 or 2 of a postseason game, which puts him in the rotation between a 1 and a 3. And the reports are that the Mets are still in on Peralta, right? So, but the word is that the Dodgers are also in on him, on Peralta. Is that to drive up the price for the Mets? Because the Yankees are in on him too. And is that to drive up the price? Is that to get him? Because I wouldn't put the Dodgers wanting to even stack even more, right? But I think it's to drive up the price. But this is a guy that is needed in this rotation. You know, I have full confidence in Nolan McLean. As a matter of fact, congratulations on your wedding, Nolan, this past weekend. But I have full confidence that Nolan McLean can be our number one going forward. But because he is a rookie, you don't want to put that pressure on him. You don't want him to make him the number one off the bat. And because Minaya and Senga are unreliable, you can't put them at the top of the rotation without us thinking about Nolan McLean being number one. Because we don't trust Senga or Minaya right now. So you have to go out and get a guy that's reliable and a proven top of the rotation arm. Some are saying that the Mets are waiting for the Skubal's arbitration hearing to hear what the final number is with Skubal. Which obviously that's the number one choice for everybody. He's the number one pitcher on the market, or potentially on the market, because he's not on the market. And the number two overall baseball pitcher in baseball, right? I still puts Paul Skeens as number one, and Skubal number two. You know, and if they are waiting for the Skubal report arbitration hearing, is that because it's going to officially take out the Tigers out of signing him long term? I mean, if you ask everybody else, signing him long term wasn't an option for the Tigers regardless. because not only do you have the Mets that need a pitcher, but you also have the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers are said to be wanting to be in that market with in trying to get Skubal's services. So next year will be interesting if Skubal's the only pitcher and Peralta doesn't come to the Mets. But I think Peralta is a very, very good option for the Mets. In a lot of ways, even better than Skubal, in my opinion. There's still some injury risk with Skubal. He's already had 2 Tommy Johns. And so, there's always a risk with a guy like that. But at the end of the day, Skubal is the best pitcher in baseball. Which one would be better for the Mets? Well, I think if you are the Tiger camp and that number for Skubal comes close to the 30s, well, who's in on that? See, and that's the other part that we need to consider. If he gets traded, he might actually have to wait to get traded until the trade deadline, because right now there's only a few teams that would take on a $30 million contract, especially in January, right? You could potentially have the Red Sox. You have Toronto, potentially. You have the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers that would take on that salary at $30 million. Maybe San Francisco. And so the question is, how many of those top teams are actually in on Skubal if his number comes around 30? Right? Obviously the Mets. Most likely the Dodgers. I don't think the Yankees are in it. I don't think Toronto's in it. They're not looking for another pitcher, or at least of that caliber. I may be wrong. In Boston, do they want to put a super rotation together because they lost out on Bregman? Maybe. So that's only gives you a couple teams, and that we know about, right? And then those couple teams, we don't know who's actually in because of the price tag. So Skubal might actually cost you less than a Peralta. Why? Peralta is only going to cost you $8 million this year. Well, there's a lot more teams in on that, right? Because of that price. So honestly, a Skubal might have cost you a lot less in the trade market right now. That's why I think he's going into the season with the Tigers. I think they're going to hold on to him until the trade deadline. And then they're going to shop him around. I don't think he's going to be shopped around anytime soon because of that price tag. It's just too much for most teams. And the only way that you take on that contract is if you think you have a shot. And only time will tell that. Most teams are not thinking they want to spend that money right now. So I don't think that he's going to be available. We can continue talking about him, but I don't think he's going to be available. But Peralta, I think, is available because this is a typical Milwaukee move. Trade their guys to get some pieces back. They did it for Burns, and I think they did it with Williams. And I think they're going to do it with Peralta as well, because there's too much smoke for him not to be traded. Whether it's to the Mets, whether it's to the Yankees, whether it's to the Dodgers, there's way too much smoke. There's too many teams in on him, or too many rumors surrounded around Peralta. So what does that mean? What is it going to cost you? Well, right now we have a lot of infielders. Is it going to cost you Brett Beatty? Could it cost you Brett Beatty? No. They're known to want to have some. They want some pitching ready arms. Is it maybe a Brandon Sproat or Christian Scott? And then a lesser positional player. Most likely that's probably the avenue. I wouldn't trade him for Jonathan. Jonathan 22 and still looking like he could be a top of the rotation pitcher if he develops, right? And I think we need to allow him to develop because he is only 22. So that's really the question is, what's going to be the cost for Peralta, and is that cost what's going to take us out of the bidding for Peralta? And that's a possibility. I'm not of the camp that's going to just give him whatever he wants, or whatever they want, not whatever he wants because he's not a free agent, but whatever they want, because he's going to be a free agent. You know, obviously with a guy like Peralta, you have the chance of potentially signing him long term, because I think whoever trades for him has that chance because he's a guy that wants to be on a team that he wants to sign a long term deal. He's a guy that is looking to have stability. So that's the difference with a Peralta is that and that's the benefit of trading for a Peralta is that he's a guy that wants to sign long term. And Stearns has history with Peralta. So at the end of the day, we need to one, see what they want. If it's a Brandon Sproat, I'm willing to give up a Brandon Sproat. I'm actually not willing to give up a Jonathan. Obviously, not giving up Nolan McLean. Maybe their interest is a Christian Scott, but at the end of the day, probably not because he's coming off injury. And people are going to want to see him first before taking him on. So Brandon Sproat's probably in this package. What else they're asking for? Who knows? And but if it's too costly, I'd be out just because he is a free agent next year. But that's the next move. That needs to be the next move for the Mets. We need to solidify this rotation. If we don't get another hitter, I know lots of talks about Cody Bellinger, and if it's a short-term deal, obviously I'd be okay with Cody Bellinger, but I am nowhere willing to give him a 5-year deal. No way, no how. That's not a guy that I want long-term. He's too up and down, and not a guy that I have a lot of trust in. But a short-term deal, I just don't know what the appetite of Stearns is to sign Bellinger. Not because he doesn't like the player, but because of losing more draft picks. Is he really willing to lose more draft picks? And I don't know. I doubt it, but I can't say for sure. So I'm going to leave that one up in the air. If we get him, we get him. I'll be happy if we get a Bellinger. I'm not holding my breath to hold a Bellinger. I'm not demanding to get a Cody Bellinger. But if we get him, I'm not going to be upset either because he is a good player. And we need outfield help. But the outfield help can come through a trade, right? I'm not worried about that. I do believe that we're not done. I do believe we're going to get an outfielder of some sort here to help with that outfield. But I think the next priority has to be pitching more than anything else. Let them figure out how the rotation is going to square up because, like we talked about, none of the starting rotation right now has options. Unless you talk about Nolan McLean, but I don't think he has an option because I think he's starting with the team from jump. So that's why I say I don't think he has an option. So other than that, nobody else has an option. everybody has to be part of this rotation unless we're going with a six-man. Unless we're going with a six-man, we have to look to be removing one of these guys from the rotation. Mania, Senga, Peterson, Holmes, and McLean. No option to send any of those guys down. McLean only has options, but he's not going down because he's our future ace. So we'll see how it pans out. But I think the priority has to be pitching, no matter what. And so let's get that pitching. Let's get that rotation solidified, so we can get into 2026 with a shot. But guys, before we get out of here, let me know how you're feeling. How you feeling about the Bichette signing a few days later, losing Tucker? What else do we need? Do we need to sign Bellinger? Do we go all out for Peralta? Do we go all out for potential Scooble? Do we explore other trades, right? The fantasy trade is still trying to get Tatis off the Padres, right? Let's see how that pans out. And I don't think he's available, but if you knock on the door enough, sometimes they might change their mind. But who knows? I digress. But let me know how you're feeling in the replays. Let me know how you're feeling. But before we get out of here, like this video, subscribe to the channel, let everybody know, and until the next time, let's go Mets.